Mom, you are not on the list. My son stopped me at the entrance of my granddaughter's wedding in front of 200 people. My name is Emily. I am 72 years old and I am a widow. But they forgot one little detail. The person who paid for the entire party was me. I had spent the whole morning getting ready. You know how it is, a granddaughter's wedding. The first granddaughter getting married is an event one waits a lifetime for. I am so happy that you are here. If you are listening to this story, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from. I want to know how far our grandmother stories reach. Welcome to Grace's Heart Stories. My Sarah, it seemed like yesterday that I was changing that little girl's diapers, teaching her how to make the chocolate chip cookies that my late husband David loved so much. And now she was getting married. A grandmother's heart cannot contain the pride. I chose my best dress, a silk rose gown that I kept for a special occasion. I put on the pearl necklace that belonged to my mother and that French perfume that I only use on holidays. I felt beautiful. I felt dignified. I wanted Sarah to look at me and see a happy grandmother, a matriarch. Little did I know that the role my son, Michael, had reserved for me was that of a nuisance. In the last 6 months, my life revolved around that wedding. Michael and my daughter-in-law Linda came to my house, sat in my velvet armchair, drank my coffee, and with the sweetest eyes in the world, explained their difficulties. "Mom, you know, things are tough," Michael started, "and we want so much to give Sarah the wedding of her dreams." I, foolish as I am, opened my heart and my wallet. "How much does my granddaughter's dream wedding cost?" I asked. And they showed me quotes for an estate just outside the city that looked like a palace, a banquet that served lobster, and a dress that cost the same as a compact car. And I paid. I paid for everything, every penny, over $50,000, all transferred from my account, the account that David left me so that I would have a peaceful old age and be able to help the family. I signed the contracts. I negotiated with the vendors. My name was on every little piece of that party. I took a taxi and went humming softly. The driver, a nice young man, even gave me a compliment. "You look very elegant, ma'am. You must be going to a good party." I smiled and said, "I am going to the happiest day of my granddaughter's life," when I arrived at the Golden Retreat Estate, as they had named it. To make it sound fancy, the place was dazzling. Arches of white flowers, little lights hanging from the trees, soft classical music. The guests were arriving, all well-dressed, laughing. There were about 200 people. 200 people that I knew. Family friends, neighbors, distant relatives. Everyone greeted me from afar, waving their hands. "Good evening, Emily. What a beautiful party." I walked proudly to the main entrance. Michael and Linda were there, greeting the guests. My son wore a suit that looked custom-made on his body. My daughter-in-law, Linda, wore an emerald green dress that shone brighter than a Christmas tree. "Michael, son, what a blessing," I said, approaching to give him a kiss. He did not move. Michael looked at me. He looked to the sides and his face closed up. He did not look like the boy I breastfed. He looked like a bank manager denying me a loan. Linda, beside him, looked away and pretended to arrange a flower in the table arrangement. "Mom," he said, and his voice was cold as ice. "What are you doing here?" I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "What do you mean? What am I doing? I came to see my granddaughter get married. I came to the party. What else?" That was when he took the folder the receptionist was holding. He ran his finger down the list once, twice, with a seriousness that put a knot in my stomach. The music seemed to lower in volume. The 200 people in line behind me went silent. I felt all eyes on me. "Mom, you are not on the list," he said, in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. My smile froze. "What do you mean I am not on the list, Michael? What kind of joke is this?" "It is not a joke," he said impatiently. "Your name is not here." It must have been a mistake with the invitation. Mistake with the invitation? The invitation that I had paid for? The list that I myself helped Linda review, so that no aunt from out of town was left out. Humiliation rose up my face like a fever. I felt my cheeks burn. I looked at Linda, who was now looking at me with a little victorious smile, almost imperceptible. I looked at the 200 people watching the scene. I saw Matilda, my neighbor of 30 years, with her hand over her mouth, scandalized. I saw my nephew Charles pretending to look at his phone. Nobody said anything. Nobody defended me. I was expelled in front of everyone, treated like a crasher, a homeless person, a public nuisance. I took a deep breath. A whole life of dignity was not going to be destroyed by an ungrateful brat. I was not going to give them the pleasure of seeing me cry or scream. I adjusted my pearl necklace. I looked straight into Michael's cold eyes. "That is fine, son." My voice came out steady. To my own surprise, it did not tremble. "If it was a mistake, I apologize for bothering you." I turned around and took the longest walk of my life. I passed through the line of 200 people who parted to let me pass, as if I were a contagious disease. Nobody touched me. Nobody offered me an arm. I walked with my head held high, passing under the flower arches that I paid for, listening to the classical music that I chose, leaving the party that I had provided. The taxi driver was still there, at the waiting spot. "What happened, ma'am? Did you forget something?" he asked. "Yes." "I forgot," I said, getting into the car. "I forgot who my son really was." The ride back home was silent. The rage from the public disdain was so great that I could not even cry. Moral indignation was drowning me. They used me. They took my money. They sucked my goodwill dry. And when the time came to celebrate, they discarded me like orange peel. They wanted my money, but they did not want me. They were ashamed of the old woman. I arrived home, and the silence of my apartment was deafening. The pink dress seemed like a ridiculous costume. I took it off and threw it on the floor. I stood there in the living room, looking at David's portrait on the wall. David never would have allowed this. David would have looked at Michael and said, "You are no son of mine." But David was no longer here. It was just me. I could sit and cry. I could call my sisters and lament. I could take a sleeping pill and pretend that this night never happened. But the Emily who returned from that party was not the same Emily who went. The humiliation had burned away the silly little grandma and had awakened Emily Miller, the woman who managed her husband's business for 10 years after he got sick. The woman who balanced the books, who negotiated with suppliers, and who knew the value of every dollar. I did not cry. I went to my small office, opened the file drawer, and took out a thick, cream-colored folder. On the cover it said, "Sarah's Wedding." Inside was everything. The signed contract with the estate, in my name, the banquet receipts in my name, the invoices for the decoration in my name, the wire transfer records going from my account to the account of every vendor. I picked up the phone. It was about 8 at night, but I knew he would answer. "Mr. Harrison, good evening. This is Emily Miller speaking." There was a pause on the other end. "Mrs. Emily, what a surprise. Congratulations. Isn't today your granddaughter's big wedding day?" My lips curled into a smile that had no joy in it. It was a smile of iron. "Mr. Harrison, you have been my lawyer for over 30 years, because you are the best, and I need you to be the best tomorrow morning. Do you have 5 minutes? For you, Mrs. Emily, I have all night. What happened? What happened is that I was invited to leave the party that I paid for. What happened is that my son and daughter-in-law made a small calculation error. They thought they could keep my money and treat me like trash, and I need you to help me correct that error." I sat in my leather chair, the folder open in front of me. The pain in my chest was still there. The shame still burned. But now there was something else. There was a plan. Michael thought he had left me out of the party. He did not know that I had just closed the door to the comfortable life he knew. The next day, he was not going to receive a little apology letter. He was going to receive a notice. I did not sleep that night. How does one sleep after being thrown out of their own granddaughter's wedding like a stray dog? I stayed seated in the living room armchair, the pink dress still lying on the floor. A monument to my humiliation. Every hour on the hour, the cuckoo clock that David had given me seemed to scream in my face. Error, error, error. The sun came up, but the house remained dark for me. I did not make coffee. The smell of brewed coffee, which was always my comfort, tasted bitter to me that day. The pain in my chest was no longer the sharp stab of the night before. It was a dull pain, heavy, grief. I was mourning the son I thought I had. At 9 a.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. Mr. Harrison was not only my lawyer for 30 years, he was also Michael's godfather. He had seen my son grow up. "Emily," he said as soon as I opened the door. He did not say good morning. He looked at my face, my sunken eyes, and the expression of concern transformed into righteous anger. "For the love of God, sit down, Emily, sit down." "I will not sit, Harrison. I am fine. The folder is on the table." He took off his jacket. A man of about 75 years, but still with the straight back of someone who spent a life fighting in courts. He sat at the dining table, opened the cream-colored folder, and started to read. I remained standing, looking out the window. The day was beautiful. The neighbors' children were playing in the yard. A normal Sunday, a Sunday where I should be having breakfast at a luxury hotel, laughing with my granddaughter about the party, perhaps complaining about my feet hurting from so much dancing. "Emily, Mr. Harrison called, and his voice snapped me out of the trance. "I am seeing the banquet contracts, the decoration receipts, the rental of the estate. Everything is in your name. I paid for everything, Harrison. Even the wedding favors," I said without turning around. "And the payments? All came from my personal account, direct transfers." He tapped his finger on the bank statements I had stapled. "They have no way to argue that it was a gift in the legal sense. You were the contractor for all services. Technically, the party was yours. You were the hostess." I laughed, a dry sound that scraped my throat. Hostess. And they left me at the door. What irony! That is more than irony, Emily. That is despicable. He fell silent. He knew Michael. I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking of the boy he saw make his first communion. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "We can sue for moral damages, public humiliation with 200 witnesses." I turned around and looked at him. "Harrison, what do you think I want? An apology? A compensation check that they pay me with my own money?" It was in that moment that the realization hit me. Not the realization of humiliation, but the realization of power. They did not see me as a mother or grandmother. They saw me as a source, a well of money that never runs dry. And what do you do with a well when you no longer need it? You cover it. Or, in their case, they prevent me from entering the party so as not to ruin the photo. I remembered years of underestimation, years of being treated like the little old lady. "Oh, Mom, you do not understand real estate investment," Michael told me when I suggested he not buy that luxury car and instead invest in an apartment to rent out. "Mrs. Emily, that phone is too complicated for you," Linda told me with that little voice of pity when I asked about the bank app. They did not know that after David passed, I managed the cargo transport company for 10 years. I negotiated contracts with drivers, dealt with the union, made cash flow sheets that would make Linda cry. I sold the company 5 years ago for a fortune that Michael and Linda thought was just a good pension. They had no idea of the size. They thought my $50,000 for the party was a huge sacrifice. For me, it was pocket change. Pocket change that I gave with love and that they spit in my face. I saw myself from the outside. The good widow, Mrs. Emily, the one who bakes cookies, the one who stays with the grandkids so the couple can go out, the one who signs the check so the granddaughter can study abroad, the one who pays the daughter-in-law's credit card just this once. I was not a person to them. I was a function, Harrison, I said, and my voice was different now. That little tremor of crying had disappeared. It was the voice of Emily Miller, director of Miller Logistics, as David named the company even though Michael was still a boy. I put away this wedding folder. It is the proof of the damage, but it is not the weapon. Harrison looked at me, confused. Emily? I do not understand. Where are Michael and Linda now? I asked. Well, today is Sunday. The wedding was yesterday. They must be leaving for their honeymoon, to Paris. I think I heard Sarah mention it, he said. Perfect. They will have 15 days of happiness. They are going to need to cherish that memory. I went to my other office, not the social one where I keep the house receipts. I went to David's office, which I always kept locked. I opened the safe. I took out another folder, a blue folder. I returned to the living room. I placed the blue folder in front of Harrison. And this? He asked. This, I said, is power rediscovered. He opened it. There were 2 deeds, the apartment where Michael and Linda live, in the downtown district, 3 bedrooms, master bedroom with bath, large balcony. Harrison opened his eyes. It is in your name. Emily. Of course it is. I bought it as an investment. Michael came with the story that rent was too expensive, that Linda wanted a better place to raise the children. I told them they could live there as a favor, a verbal agreement. There is no signed paper. There is no lease. They have lived there for 8 years for free. They never paid $1 of maintenance fees. I pay. They never paid property tax. I pay. And the other deed? He asked. The beach house, where they spend all the long weekends and holidays, where Linda takes photos and uploads them to social media saying, our paradise. Harrison swallowed hard. And in the garage, Harrison. Go to my parking spot, I continued. I have an imported car, dark gray. It is the car Michael uses. The company car, he tells his friends. The company was mine. I sold the operation, but I kept the cars. The car is in my name. The insurance is in my name. The registration. I pay it. Mr. Harrison closed the blue folder. He leaned back in the chair. He no longer looked like a lawyer. He looked like a general looking at a war map. Emily Miller. What do you want me to do? They kicked me out of the party. They erased me from the list. Well, I will do the same. I started walking around the room. The headache was gone. The hunger was gone. The sadness had turned into jet fuel. First, the downtown apartment. I want an eviction notice as soon as he steps in the airport back from Paris. I want a process server waiting at the building. No, better. I want the notice taped to the door of the apartment that is not theirs. 30 days to get out. 30 days. Emily. That is what the law says, right? I asked. If it were up to my heart, I would give them 30 minutes. But I follow the law. 30 days. Second, the beach house. Change the locks. Tomorrow, hire a security company. If they try to enter, it is trespassing. Third, the car. That is simpler. You are going to send a certified letter demanding the immediate return of the asset. If he does not return it in 48 hours, we file a report for misappropriation. Fourth, I stopped. I went to my purse that was lying on the armchair. I took out my phone. I opened the bank app, the same one Linda swore I did not know how to use. I went to scheduled transfers. There it was. Allowance Michael Miller, $3,000 every first of the month. I looked at the cancel button. Harrison, I said, showing him the screen. Look at this. He saw it and whistled. $3,000 a month, he murmured. It is help for the son, as they like to say. Linda does not work, you know. She says she is a digital influencer. She influences her friends to buy things with my money. And Michael's salary at that little advertising agency he opened barely covers the suit he humiliated me in. I pressed the cancel button. A red light appeared. Scheduled transfer canceled. Done, I said. Fourth. Mr. Harrison remained silent for a good minute. He looked at me in a way he hadn't looked at me in years. Not with pity, as one looks at a widow, but with respect. The same respect he had for David. They are going to hate you, Emily, he said quietly. They already hate me, Harrison. They just hid it well because they needed my money. They do not hate me for being mean. They hate me for being old, because I remind them that they are nothing without me. The hate was already there. The only thing that is going to change is that now they will hate me from afar, and poor. And Sarah, your granddaughter? That one hurt. That was the knife that twisted. Sarah, my little girl, she was complicit. Either she knew that the grandmother who paid for her dress was not on the list and did nothing, or she was a useful idiot, manipulated by her dad and mom. Sarah made her choice, I said, and my voice cracked for the first time. When she saw her father stop her grandmother at the door and did not say a single word, she chose. She chose luxury. She chose the party. She chose their side. Now she will have to live with the side she chose, but without the grandmother's benefits. I took a deep breath. You spend your whole life giving roots to your children, Harrison. You bury yourself in the earth so that they grow strong. But when the tree grows and only bears rotten fruit, you have to stop watering. And sometimes, Harrison, sometimes you have to cut down the whole tree. Mr. Harrison stood up. He put the blue folder in his briefcase. He took his jacket. I will prepare the notices today, Emily. The process server will be at the building when they return. The locksmith will be at the beach house tomorrow. He paused at the door. And you, are you going to be okay? I looked at David's portrait on the wall. He was still smiling. As always, I am already okay, Harrison. Last night I felt like a mistake. Today I feel like a beginning. He nodded and left. I closed the door. The house was silent, but it was no longer the silence of defeat. It was the silence before the battle, the silence of strategy. My son and daughter-in-law were flying over the Atlantic, drinking champagne, laughing at the crazy old woman they had tricked. They were going to the City of Lights. They did not know that upon returning, all the lights of the easy life they knew would be turned off. The next 15 days were the strangest of my life. Michael and Linda were in Paris drinking champagne and eating expensive cheese, and I was in the city dismantling the life I had built for them. The execution was silent, exactly as I planned. Grandma Emily was replaced by Emily Miller, strategist. I felt like a war general, moving my pieces on a board that only I saw. The first day, Monday, Mr. Harrison called me. Emily, the locksmith is already at the beach house. The locks on the beach house will be changed before noon. Perfect, I responded. Send me the receipt and the new keys with a trusted courier. While he took care of the beach, I took care of my house. I finally picked up that pink dress that was still on the floor of my room, and I did not wash it. I tore it. I tore it with my own hands with a cold rage that I did not know I had. I cut it into pieces and put it in a trash bag. Afterwards, I did a cleaning. I went to the guest room, the one they called our room when they stayed here. I removed the expensive sheets that Linda demanded I buy, the embroidered towels. I removed everything. I put it in trash bags, too. The guest room went back to being just that, a guest room. I passed through the living room and stood in front of the main picture frame. It was a photo from last Christmas. Me, Michael, Linda, and Sarah, all smiling. Linda's smile was the same one she gave me before Michael took me out of the party. I took the frame, took out the photo, and put it in a dark drawer. In its place, I put a photo of me and David the day we opened the trucking company. Both of us young, covered in grease, but with a smile of those who feel they conquered the world. Done. David, I whispered. Now the house is in order. A week passed. The first of the month arrived. That was the day I expected the most, the day of the $3,000 allowance. I got up early, made my coffee, sat in my armchair, and stared at the clock. I knew that in Paris, due to the time difference, it was already mid-afternoon. I closed my eyes and imagined the scene. Linda, with her shopping bags in the most expensive district, entering another designer bag store, handing over the debit card. The clerk, with his nose in the clouds, swipes the card once. Twice. I am sorry, ma'am. Declined. I imagined Linda turning red. Like, what do you mean, declined? Try again. My husband is rich. I imagined Michael at the corner cafe trying to pay for croissants, and his card also declined. I imagined the silent panic, the first crack in their perfect life. They did not call me. But at the end of the day, a text message arrived on my old cell phone, the one I left on just for that. "Mom, are you okay? The money didn't go through. Did something happen to you?" It was from Michael. Notice the concern. It was not. "Mom, how do you feel after the party?" It was. The money didn't go through. Did something happen? I looked at the message. My fingers wanted to answer, to write everything I had stuck in my throat. But Emily the strategist knew that silence, at that stage, was more powerful than any word. Silence was my weapon. They were in Paris without the extra money, looking at the empty bank statement and understanding nothing. Confusion was the first stage of the plan. I did not answer. I just deleted the message. In the following days, Mr. Harrison kept working. "Emily," he told me over the phone, "the eviction notice for the apartment is already registered with the notary. The process server is scheduled for the day of their arrival, just as you asked. The certified letter demanding the return of the vehicle has already been sent to the downtown address. When they arrive, the doorman will hand it to them." I felt light. I had rediscovered a purpose. I spent years being the grandmother, and there is nothing wrong with being a grandmother, but I had forgotten to be Emily. I started going out of the house. I went to the beauty salon. I cut my hair in a short and modern style, the kind Linda said was for young girls. I dyed it a bright chestnut, removing the gray hairs that aged me. I went to the mall, but not to buy gifts for the granddaughter or clothes to wear around the house. I bought a new computer, the most modern one. I hired a young man to come give me private lessons. "I want to learn how to use everything," I told him. "I want to know about spreadsheets, investments, apps." Linda thought I did not even know how to open the phone. She did not know that this week I had used the bank app to transfer 90% of my assets to an investment fund with security locks that not even the Pope could touch. The rest, the day-to-day money, I put in a new account in a digital bank that only I had access to. The old account, the one Michael knew, I left with just $1,000. In case he tried anything, it was armored. On Saturday, a day before they returned, I did something I had not done in years. I drove. I took the keys to my own car, an older model but one I adore, that was parked in the back, and I drove to the beach house. I arrived at the house and used the new keys that Mr. Harrison's courier had brought me. The house was silent, smelling of sea and closed furniture, but it no longer smelled of Linda's sweet and cloying perfume. There were no bottles of Michael's imported beer in the fridge. It was my house. I sat on the terrace, facing the sea that I paid for, and I cried. But it was not a cry of sadness. It was a cry of relief. I cried for the Emily who let herself be used. I cried for David, for having allowed his son to become that monster of ingratitude. "But it is over, my old love," I said, looking at the sea. "The circus is over. From now on, the one who commands my life and my money is me." I slept at the beach house and returned on Sunday, the day of their arrival. I knew the flight from Paris arrived at the airport at about 5 in the afternoon. I did the math, customs, suitcases, traffic. They would arrive at the downtown apartment at about 8 at night. I got ready. I took a bath with salts. I put on silk pajamas. I made myself chamomile tea. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one that faces straight at the telephone. I was not nervous. I was at peace. At 8:15, the phone rang. Michael's number. I let it ring 3 times. I took a deep breath and answered, "Hello." What came from the other side was not a voice. It was a scream, a roar of a wounded animal. "Mom, what is the meaning of this? Have you gone crazy? Are you kicking us out?" I pulled the receiver away from my ear. I could hear Linda screaming in the background. She went crazy. She wants to kill us with anger. "Call the police, Michael." I waited for the volume to lower. "Michael, please speak lower. I am not deaf." "What are you talking about?" I asked with all the innocence I could fake. "What am I talking about?" he bellowed. I have a paper taped to the door of the apartment, a process server, order of eviction, 30 days. What kind of joke is this, Mom? Ah, that, I said, as someone who remembers an unimportant detail. It is not a joke, son. It is an eviction notice. It is quite serious. Serious? You are throwing us on the street. Your son. Your only son. I am not throwing you on the street, Michael. I am asking for my apartment back. What I do with it is my problem. Where you go to live now is your problem. On the other side, there was a silence. An icy silence. He did not expect that firmness. He expected me to cry, to ask for forgiveness, to say it was the lawyer's mistake. It is about the wedding, right? His voice changed. He lost the anger and gained the negotiation tone he uses to ask me for money. Mom. For the love of God, Linda got nervous. She does not know how to organize the list. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake. We wanted to call you from Paris to apologize, but... Mistake? I cut him off. Mistake was the invitation I received, or rather that I paid for, and that you used to humiliate me in front of 200 people. But Mom, it was a misunderstanding. You were not on the list. It was the list of godparents. The receptionist got confused. No, I said, and my voice was pure ice. You looked me in the eyes and said, Mom, you are not on the list. It must be a mistake with the invitation. You stopped me, Michael. You and your wife. You treated me like a nuisance. And I finally understood. Understood what, Mom? That you were going to destroy your family? No, Michael. I understood that I no longer have a family. What I have is a son and a daughter-in-law who are parasites, who suck my money, live in my apartment, use my beach house, and still have the nerve to bar me at the door of the party that I paid for. That is not true. We love you, Linda screamed, snatching the phone. You love my money, Linda. But the money is gone, I said. What do you mean gone? Michael took the call again, already in total panic. The money? The allowance on the first? What happened? What happened is that I am old, Michael, and old people spend a lot on medicine, did you know? The money ran out. The well dried up. Those $3,000 a month are over. The imported car for which the doorman handed you the return letter, I need it back. I am going to sell it. I need money to live. Sell? But it is my car. I use it for work. It is my car, Michael. And you are going to have to work a lot now, because besides that, you have 30 days to leave my apartment. You cannot do that. I am your son. I am going to sue you. I am going to say you are senile. I am going to have you committed. I am going to ask for conservatorship. I laughed, a short and bitter laugh. Try, Michael, try to sue me. But you are going to need a good lawyer, and lawyers cost money. And as I told you, your money ran out. Mr. Harrison is very busy. He now works full-time for the senile old lady here. Wait for him to breathe, Michael, I said, closing the conversation. You erased me from the party by mistake. I am erasing you from my life by decision. You have 30 days. The clock started running the moment you read the notice. Good night, son, and welcome back from the honeymoon. I hung up. The silence in my living room was the most beautiful sound in the world. I hung up, and for the first time in many years, my house, which before seemed big and empty, seemed the perfect size. It was the size of my peace. The silence that followed was not of loneliness, it was of control. Of course, the phone did not take 10 seconds to ring again, and again, and again. Michael and Linda must have been taking turns on the redial button as if life depended on it, and in reality, it did. I did not answer. I went to the device, that landline that Linda said was a museum piece, and I pulled the cord from the jack. I sat on the sofa, and for the first time since the night of the party, I took a deep breath, and the air did not weigh a ton. The shame, the humiliation, all that had left me and had gone to the right place, towards those who deserved it. I slept. I slept 8 hours straight, a heavy sleep without nightmares. The next day, I woke up with the sun on my face. The first thing I did was go to the kitchen and make my coffee, that strong coffee that David said would wake up even the dead. While the water passed through the coffee, I took my new cell phone, the one Michael did not even know existed. I opened the messaging app. 37 unread messages, all from Michael and Linda, sent during the early morning. I read the first one. Mom, for the love of God. Answer, it was a mistake. Let's talk. I read the second one. You monster, destroying your son's life. Linda felt sick. If something happens to her, the fault will be yours. I read the third one. Emily. Michael here. I thought better. Let's make a deal. How much do you want to stop this madness? Half of the apartment is mine by right of inheritance. I laughed out loud. Inheritance? I was still very much alive. I deleted all the messages without reading the rest. I went to my computer class. While I learned to make pivot tables in Excel and discovered I was very good at it, the first act of their desperation occurred downtown. Michael, after a sleepless night, decided he was going to show who was boss. He got up. He put on the expensive suit, paid with my money, and went down to the parking lot to take the imported car, my car, to go to the office of his little company. He did not count on George, the doorman. Good morning, Mr. Michael. Good morning, Mrs. Linda. Good that you returned, said George, kind as always, but without taking his hand off the electric gate button. Good morning, George. Open up. I am running late, said Michael, pressing the remote. The car went beep. The gate did not. George, I already clicked it. I am in a hurry. George came out of the booth. He looked embarrassed. Excuse me, sir, but I have express orders from the owner from Mrs. Emily Miller. Michael froze. Orders for what? For the car. Well, he pointed to the car. That car cannot leave the parking lot. It is on the list of assets to return. The insurance company was already notified, and if you take it, Mrs. Emily said to call 911 and file a theft report. Excuse me truly, but those are the rules. The owner of the car is her. I learned of the scene later, through Matilda, my neighbor from the building across the street, who was walking her dog and saw everything. She said Linda started screaming at the doorman, calling him an errand boy and an old lady's puppet. Michael, red as a tomato, had to open the car, take out the child's car seat that I also paid for, throw it on the parking lot floor and leave on foot, huffing to look for a taxi. That was the first concrete consequence. Public humiliation, exactly like mine, only his, instead of in a hall with 200 people, was in front of doormen and gossipy neighbors. The great businessman prevented from taking his car. The second consequence arrived at lunchtime. Linda, desperate and hungry, tried to order food by app. Card declined. She tried another. Declined. She tried Michael's. Declined. Those $3,000 that landed every first were not an extra. They were their oxygen. And I had turned off the tank. They could not call me because I had disconnected the phone. They could not use the money because I had cut it off. They could not use the car because I had blocked it. So they did the only thing they could do. They came to find me. I was returning from my class carrying my new computer in a nice bag. When I arrived at the entrance of my building, there they were. The two looked like castaways. Linda, with her hair messy, her makeup runny. Michael, with his suit wrinkled and a face of hate I had never seen on him. "Mom!" Michael shouted, coming towards me. I stopped. My doorman. John was already going to intervene, but I signaled him to calm down. "Michael, Linda, what an unpleasant surprise," I said. "You, cold woman, open the apartment door." "We are going to talk inside," he said, trying to grab my arm. I pulled away. "I am not going to talk to you. And you are not going to enter my house. You cannot do that. I am your son. I live here. You do not live here since 10 years ago, Michael. You live in an apartment that is mine, and as far as I know, the 30-day deadline is already running." "Mrs. Emily," started Linda with a teary voice, the voice of falseness. Please, you are being very cruel. We made a mistake. We ask for forgiveness." It was the girl with the list. She got confused. "Linda," I interrupted her, "your acting is terrible. The girl with the list was you, and you watched me be stopped. You watched your husband humiliate me, and you smiled. That little victorious smile, I remember well. You thought you had won, didn't you? That you had kept the $50,000 wedding, and in the process, got rid of the uncomfortable old woman on the same day. A great deal." Linda turned pale. She was speechless. Michael switched to threats. "You are going to regret this. This old woman, she is crazy. I am going to put her in a home. I am going to ask that they declare her incompetent. I am going to prove she is senile, spending the family money like crazy." I looked at him. My son. The baby I breastfed. The man who now threatened to take away my capacity so he could keep stealing from me. And I started to laugh, a laugh so strong that it scared poor John. "Senile, Michael. You think so?" I took my new cell phone out of my bag. "See this. It is the bank app. The same one Linda said was too complicated for me. Do you know what I did this morning? I bought stocks. Stocks in big companies. I know how to do it. And you? What do you know how to do besides spend my money?" I continued. The voice of Emily Miller, the owner of Miller Logistics, took control. "You want to declare me incompetent? Try. But you are going to need proof. Do you know what I did last week, Michael? I went to a forensic psychiatrist, one of the best in the country. I paid $500 for the consultation. I have an 8-page report that says I am perfectly lucid, more lucid than ever. Mr. Harrison has a copy. Any judge who sees your request is going to laugh in your face and see that you are just an ungrateful son trying to rob his mother." Michael's face went from the red of rage to the green of nausea. He had not thought of that. What did they think I was? A faucet that opens so they can take water and then closes. Did they forget? Who built the water tank? It was the moment for the complete revelation of the power they never knew I had. You are desperate for that 3-bedroom apartment downtown. You are crying for the imported car. You are mourning the $3,000 a month. You think that is my money, I laughed again. That, my dears, is my pocket change. They did not understand. Michael, do you think I sold the trucking company and just retired? Do you think I am the little old lady who lives off small rents? I got close and spoke softly, with such firmness that he took a step back. I sold the operation of the company. I sold the trucks and the contracts. I never sold the warehouses. Do you remember the industrial warehouses where your dad worked? Those huge ones on the east side of the city where you played driving forklifts when you were a boy? Michael blinked, stunned. Yes, well, there are 6 warehouses. 6, and they are rented out. One to Amazon, another to FedEx, another to a big pharmaceutical company. Do you know how much rent I receive a month, Michael? No, you do not know, because if you knew, you would have treated me like a queen, even if it were out of self-interest. I paused so they could assimilate it. Those $50,000 I gave for Sarah's wedding that you used to humiliate me, do you know what they represent in my monthly income? More or less what I pay in property tax. It was pocket change, Michael. Pocket change that I gave with love and that you spit out. Linda's jaw literally dropped. She stood with her mouth open, looking at me as if I were a ghost. Michael was pale. He seemed to have aged 10 years right there on the sidewalk. You thought I was the grandma, the mommy. But you forgot that I am Emily Miller, David's widow, the woman who ran a trucking company alone for 10 years and made it worth triple. You underestimated me. That was your mistake, not the mistake with the invitation. I turned to John. John, please call security. These 2 people are bothering me. No, Mom. Wait, shouted Michael, desperate. The game had changed in a way he could not keep up with. Do not call me Mom. Your right to call me Mom stayed at the door of the party. Now, if you excuse me, I have Italian class in a while. Arrivederci. I entered the building. John closed the glass door in their faces. I did not look back. I was going up in the elevator when my new cell phone rang. It was a number I did not know, but I answered. Hello? Grandma. Grandma. It is Sarah. Her voice was cracking. My heart, that grandmother's heart that I thought hardened, gave a small stumble. Sarah, my granddaughter. What a surprise. How was the honeymoon in Paris? Was the party that Grandma paid for good? Grandma, she sobbed. What is happening? Dad and Linda called me. They are hysterical. They say you went crazy, that you were kicking them out of the house. I took a deep breath. That was the last battle. I did not go crazy, Sarah. On the contrary, I have never been so sane. I am just recovering what is mine. The apartment is mine, the car is mine, the money is mine. But Grandma, why? Is it because of the party? I swear I didn't even notice. Everything was so fast, I was so nervous, and there was the final stab. You didn't notice, Sarah? I said, and my voice was a thread of ice. And you didn't notice that your grandmother, the only grandmother you have, the woman who raised you while your mother did her nails, the woman who paid for your wedding dress, was not there. You didn't look at the front row, where I should have been, and didn't see me. Didn't it seem strange to you? Did they kick you out, Grandma? She whispered. No, I arrived early, and your dad kicked me out in front of 200 people. And you, my granddaughter, you got married, you went to Paris, and in 15 days you did not call me a single time to ask, Grandma, are you alive? You only called me now because your parents' money ran out. On the other side, absolute silence. I only heard her swallowed sobs. Your parents made their choice, Sarah, and you, with your silence, made yours. You chose the party. You chose luxury. Now live with your choices. I love you, my girl. But the silly grandma who paid for everything and put up with everything, she died. She died at the door of your party. I hung up. The elevator doors opened on my floor. I entered my apartment. The new dynamic of power was not only established, it was cemented. My new reality began with silence, but it was not the silence of an empty house. It was the silence of a house in peace. In the days that followed, I felt like someone waking up from a long fever. The world seemed clearer, the colors more vivid, and I was in command. The 30 days I gave Michael and Linda to leave the apartment flew by for me and must have dragged like eternity for them. They did not try to call me. It seems they hired a lawyer. Mr. Harrison called me, laughing. Emily, a colleague, spoke to me. A certain lawyer named Mr. Banks. It seems Michael and Linda hired him to negotiate a friendly exit from the apartment, he told me. And what did you tell him? Mr. Harrison? I asked while watering my plants. I told him that Mrs. Emily Miller does not negotiate with those who treat her like trash, that the only possible negotiation was the delivery of the keys on day 30, or an eviction order would be requested. The poor guy was left without words. I think they didn't tell him the whole story. They never tell it whole, I responded. And the car, Harrison? The car was already returned. Michael had to pay a tow truck to take it to his office garage. It seems he didn't want to have the courage to bring it himself. Well, at least an intelligent decision on his part. On day 30, promptly at 5 in the afternoon, a courier left a manila envelope at the front desk. Inside, the keys to the downtown apartment and the keys to the beach house. No note, no apology, just surrender. I took those keys. They were heavy, not because of the metal, but because of the lesson they had cost. I learned from Matilda. God bless her. She is more efficient than a news agency, that Michael and Linda did not go to a luxury hotel. They could no longer afford it. They had to rent a tiny apartment with 1 bedroom and a living room, out in the suburbs, in a humble neighborhood, with the little that Michael managed to borrow. Linda, the digital influencer, had to sell the designer bags that I paid for to gather the deposit money. The lesson they learned was not one of love or regret. That type of person does not learn that lesson. The lesson they learned was that of power. They learned the hard way, that the money they loved so much did not come from them, it came from me, and that the person who controls the money controls the game. The humiliation they put me through was public. Their fall was silent but definitive. The great businessman and the society lady were now taking public transport, but the biggest transformation was not theirs, it was mine. I sold the downtown apartment. I sold it in a week at an excellent price. The money did not stay sitting in the account. I used my new computer knowledge and started investing, but not just in stocks. I decided to invest in myself. I signed up for Italian classes. That old dream. Buongiorno, come stai. I discovered I have a talent for languages, and that the teacher, a very nice Italian man named Lorenzo, adored my chocolate chip cookies. I took an old project out of a drawer, mine and David's, a small shelter for stray dogs. With the money from the sale of the apartment, I bought a small piece of land upstate and started construction. Mr. Harrison offered to do all the legal work for free as a foundation. He said it was the most honorable thing he had done in years. My house, once the scene of my loneliness, became a center of activity. My friends from the neighborhood, who before only saw me as the poor widow, now saw me differently. Matilda stopped me in the elevator. "Emily," she said, taking my hand, "I need to tell you something. What you did was for all of us. For so many insults we swallowed quietly all our lives. You shouted for everyone. I hadn't thought of it like that. I didn't do it for everyone. I did it for me. But by doing it for me, I ended up inspiring others. The positive impact was not just on my bank account, but on my soul and on those who were close. And Sarah, my granddaughter, that was the part that kept hurting. She didn't call me again, but about 2 months after her parents moved to the tiny apartment, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and my heart stopped. It was her, alone. She was thinner, without designer bags. She wore simple jeans and a t-shirt. She was no longer the dazzling bride who went to Paris. She looked like a scared girl. I opened the door. We stood looking at each other for a long time. She couldn't speak. She just cried. "Grandma," she finally managed to say. "Come in, Sarah." She entered and sat on the sofa, the same sofa where her parents sat to ask me for the party money. "Grandma, I separated," she said. I sat in my armchair. I was not surprised. "What happened, child?" "The money, Grandma. The money ran out. Mark, my husband, did not marry me. He married Mrs. Emily Miller's granddaughter. When he found out that my parents had lost everything, that you had cut them off, he changed. He became rude. He said I tricked him, that he was not going to support poor relatives." She looked at me, eyes full of a shame I knew well. "I discovered, Grandma, that the love I thought he had for me was the same as the love my parents said they had for you, a love that depended on your bank statement." I got up, went to the kitchen, and made chamomile tea with honey, like when she was a little girl and had nightmares. I returned and put the cup in her hands. They were trembling. "And your parents?" I asked. "They are unbearable," she blurted out. "My mom cries all day blaming my dad. My dad screams all day blaming you. They don't ask me how I am. They only ask me if I already came to talk to the old lady, if I already asked for forgiveness on their behalf." She looked at the tea. "They learned nothing, Grandma. They are not sorry for having humiliated you. They are angry because they were discovered. They are angry because the well dried up, and there was the lesson that she had learned, harder than her parents. Grandma, I know I was wrong." She looked me in the eyes. "I saw. I was at the altar, and I saw when you arrived. I saw when my dad stopped you. I saw, and I did nothing. I was scared. Scared of ruining the party. Scared of what Linda would say. I was a coward, and I don't blame you for anything. You did what you had to do." I sat next to her on the sofa. She was my granddaughter, blood of my blood. "You spend your life, Sarah," I said, and the voice was a grandmother's, not a strategist's. "You spend your whole life swallowing insults to keep the peace. You think that being old is being good, being a doormat for others to walk on. We forget that dignity has no age. It is not clothing that one takes off when getting old. It is our skin. I took her hand. What I did not do against your dad. I did it for me. I chose my dignity. And that is a lesson that you, unfortunately, had to learn the hard way. I have nowhere to go, Grandma, she whispered. Mark kicked me out. I don't want to go back to my parents' house. I looked at her. At the same girl I taught to ride a bicycle. There is a guest room in the back, I said. It was always yours. Sarah did not become a princess. She started working. I did not give her money. I gave her an old computer and an internet connection. She, who was good at drawing, started doing design work as a freelancer. She started paying her own bills. She started contributing for the electricity and gas. My transformation was complete, not because I had defeated my son, but because I had found myself. I had rediscovered Emily, the strong, lucid woman, capable of managing 6 logistics warehouses and a dog shelter at the same time. The woman who now spoke Italian and understood stock market shares. Michael and Linda never looked for me again. I learned, through Mr. Harrison, that they tried to file a weird lawsuit, something about reverse elderly abandonment, an invention of the lawyer. The judge didn't even accept the case. They became a bitter footnote in my history. Today I look back at that night at the estate door with the pink dress, and I no longer feel humiliation. I feel gratitude. It had to happen that they left me out of the party that I myself paid for, so that finally I would be invited to enter my own life. And from that party, I no longer let anyone take me out. When a door closes in our face, sometimes it is life pushing us to enter, finally our own house, that of dignity. No son, no money, and no party are worth more than the peace of a woman who finally chooses herself. If this story of Emily touched your heart, subscribe and tell me in the comments. If you were in my place, what would you have done? And tell me also, where are you listening to my story from?